room just around the corner from where I'm sitting in Varda's El Segundo headquarters, Varda's mission operators spent 3 days last week working with our partners to deorbit and re-enter the W-2 capsule, which spent a little more than 6 weeks in orbit before returning to Earth and landing in South Australia. I'm Muk Pandian, Director of Strategic Partnering and Advanced Concepts here at Varda Space Industries. W-2's reentry was a big moment for us and for the space industry, so we documented the people and processes involved in making it happen. And over the next half hour, we'll show you how it worked. This was a meaningful event for us, not only because W-2 is Varda's second successful mission, but we also made history. W-2 was the first commercial spacecraft to land in Australia. The capsule carried several payloads on board. Over the course of about 80 hours, Varda and Rocket Lab mission operators worked together to position the W-2 spacecraft in orbit to get it to the exact place it needs to be for a successful reentry. After a few burns to get the capsule where it needed to be, it was ultimately released and then recovered from the outback the next day. During this process, we received regular updates from our partners around the world, including from Rocket Lab, the developers of the Pioneer satellite bus that supported the W-2 capsule in orbit in Long Beach, California, and Auckland, New Zealand. And we also documented the recovery of the capsule on the ground with our reentry range operators at Southern Launch in Ceduna, Australia at the Koonibba test range. This story starts with the team at Rocket Lab, where Lindsay McLaurin sat with the mission operators just before they lit up the engines and got the final burn underway.
My name is Lindsay McLaurin, and I'm a Senior Communications Manager here at Rocket Lab. Behind me is Mission Control at our headquarters in Long Beach, California, where Rocket Lab and Varda spacecraft operators are currently in the process of conducting re-entry maneuvers to bring Varda's re-entry capsule to Earth for landing in South Australia. Varda's re-entry capsule is powered by our Pioneer spacecraft, which was built down the hall here at our spacecraft production facility. Our Pioneer spacecraft is a highly configurable and responsive platform designed to support missions like this one. The W-2 mission spacecraft operators have begun critical maneuvers which will carefully guide the spacecraft back to Earth by slowing it down and making sure it lands safely. To start this process, our flight dynamics team has designed 3 propulsion maneuvers, or burns, to transition W-2 from launch deployment orbit to re-entry. Each precisely designed burn, performed by our 3D printed Curie engine, the same engine used on the kick stage of our Electron rocket, is targeted to a very specific and tightly constrained re-entry path prior to Varda's capsule separation and re-entry. Our Curie engine is a much smaller propulsion system that allows the precise maneuverability to raise and lower the spacecraft orbital placement to perfectly position the vehicle for re-entry. Starting from its wide 500-kilometer circular orbit, we light up the spacecraft engine for a burn in the opposite direction of its current path to slow things down. This drops our perigee, or the point at which we pass closest to Earth, to 300 kilometers. A second engine burn will then raise the orbit's apogee, the point at which the spacecraft passes furthest from Earth, all the way up to 900 kilometers, aligning the vehicle for its re-entry path. Next, our Pioneer spacecraft will perform a third and final engine burn to release Varda's capsule at an approximately 470-kilometer altitude at hypersonic speeds at roughly 31,000 kilometers an hour. Depending on how the third burn executes, the Curie engine can autonomously add in a fourth burn to correct for any possible trajectory misalignments. Once the capsule is released, the Varda team will monitor the final re-entry, descent, landing, and recovery of the capsule at Koonibba test range, operated by Southern Launch. Let's check in down under with Amy over at Southern Launch to see what's next.
Thanks, Lindsay, and g'day to everyone from down under. I am currently inside the Southern Launch Mission Control, eagerly awaiting the return of the W-2 capsule. Southern Launch is the range operator for this mission, and we have been working closely with Rocket Lab and Varda throughout the mission. Our role has been twofold. Firstly, our flight safety and regulatory teams use their expertise to obtain the first ever commercial spacecraft re-entry permit in Australian history on behalf of Varda. It's something we're incredibly proud of. The second part of our role is to operate the Koonibba test range, ready for the re-entry of the W-2 capsule. The Koonibba test range has over 41,000 square kilometres of space, or 15,830 square miles of area for the capsule to land in. Our team has been on site with the Varda team for the past few days, preparing the telemetry equipment, finalising the recovery processes and ensuring all of our operations are aligned ready for tonight. Right now, we have teams situated in 4 different locations across South Australia, ready for the return of the W-2 capsule. Our flight safety team is in our mission control in Adelaide, taking in all of the latest weather data and flight data from Varda and Rocket Lab to ensure the predicted flight path will see the safe return of the capsule. We also have a team in our Ceduna mission control working alongside the Varda recovery team to track that final re-entry of the capsule. Tonight, we also are working with some teams from the University of Southern Queensland at 2 sites near the Koonibba test range. They are using groundbreaking technology to track the capsule from both the ground and air as it enters in the Earth's atmosphere at approximately 31,000 kilometres per hour. Some of the team are out in the field right now tracking the capsule from the ground, and we've also got a plane above the clouds ready to track the capsule from the air. This mission is another first for the Koonibba test range, which hosted the first commercial space launch back in 2020 for Australia. Southern Launch operates the Koonibba test range in partnership with the Koonibba Community Aboriginal Corporation, and I can assure you that everyone out in Koonibba, a town of just 120 people, is in their backyard watching the sky tonight. So, from the Aussie outback back to California in the mission control.
Orbit sequence is still running. Capsule telemetry remains nominal.
The Rocket Lab team is giving instructions for the 3rd burn.
Vehicle is configured for reentry. BGA is armed.
We did observe at the end of the pass there, the capsule got configured into its final reentry state.
We're hearing the nets. While we wait for them to get ready, let's take a look at how Rocket Lab's Pioneer satellite powers reentry.
In-space manufacturing may sound like science fiction, but together, Rocket Lab and Varda Space Industries have made this a reality. Here's how. Across Varda's 4 missions, our Pioneer spacecraft will provide power, propulsion, communications, and attitude control in orbit, allowing Varda's capsule to leverage microgravity conditions to conduct in-space manufacturing and technology demonstrations. Our first mission for Varda was successfully completed in 2024, proving that the microgravity conditions in space can support pharmaceutical processing, delivering results that are challenging to replicate on the ground. Bringing the capsule back to Earth starts with a maneuver to transition the spacecraft from its 500-kilometer circular orbit to an elliptical one. We light up the spacecraft engine for a burn in the opposite direction to slow things down. This drops our perigee, or the point at which we pass closest to Earth, to 300 kilometers. A second engine burn will then raise the orbit's apogee, the point at which the spacecraft passes furthest from the Earth, all the way up to 900 kilometers. Rocket Lab and Varda operators in mission control will be monitoring this closely. As soon as the desired landing location on Earth lines up with the re-entry path for our spacecraft, it will be all systems go. The Pioneer spacecraft will perform a 3rd engine burn of the 3D printed Curie engine to set the Varda capsule on its return trajectory to Earth. During that descent, a 4th burn can occur out of our line of sight to keep the mission on target if an adjustment to the trajectory is needed. Returning at hypersonic speeds at roughly 31,000 kilometers an hour, our spacecraft will release the Varda capsule at an approximate 470 kilometer altitude. This is the moment of success for Rocket Lab and our spacecraft. Then it's over to the Varda team to monitor the final re-entry, descent, landing, and recovery of the capsule once it reaches the ground. And just like that, from 900 kilometers above Earth to touchdown in South Australia, all in the space of just 15 minutes. The new era in space manufacturing continues.
Full separation expected in 3 minutes.
Varda Safety, this is range operations. Be advised the temporary restricted area and temporary danger area are now active.
Varda Safety, copy all, thank you.
Luke here back at Varda. We've just heard that the final burn has been successful, so now it's transitioning over to Varda deorbit sequence. What's the vibe over at Mission Control right now, Brandi?
Everyone's incredibly focused and, just really wanting to make sure that we have mission success here.
Yeah.
But you can really feel the energy and the excitement starting to build up in the room, and everyone is so excited to bring Winnie home.
Yeah. This is a big deal for Varda. It's like our second mission. We're actually making this happen, high cadence.
Yep.
What are we flying? Why is it a big deal for Varda?
Yeah. Like you said, this shows that we have a real capability here and we are starting to fly it repeatedly, which is really exciting for us. But this is also really exciting for our customers. So they are doing some incredible research on this mission. Actually, the payload that we're flying for the Air Force Research Lab called OSPREY, which is the optical sensing of plasma in the reentry environment.
Great DoD acronym.
Great acronym. That mission is focused on basically collecting all of the spectral emissions from the plasma that is enveloping our capsule during reentry. And this is really important because it helps the government understand what that reentry environment actually is. And it has some very unique aerothermal chemical environment aspects to it. So this really just helps them better understand that environment.
Very cool, very cool. And I know we also have a TPS experiment on board for another customer. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've partnered with NASA from the beginning on our heat shield materials, and they're flying some CPICA on this mission that is going to help them better understand how the material survives the reentry environment, and they can use that to actually inform how they build heat shields for all of their other missions that they're doing out in the solar system.
Very cool. And so we got customers on board, second mission. What's next for Varda?
Yeah, so now it's all about hitting that cadence and really ramping this up. We want to make reentry just a very commonplace occurrence. And so I think we're already well on our way of doing that. We actually have our next mission up at Vandenberg ready to launch right now. So hopefully here in the next little bit, we'll be launching that mission. And we have 3 total missions left for the rest of this year. So now we just need to get our head down and execute.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brandi Sippel, VP of Mission Management over here. Thanks for being with us today. Now we'll go back to Mission Control and see how things are going over there.
Seconds until expected capsule separation.
All right, so the final burn is complete. We're about to begin the deorbit sequence, and the Rocket Lab Pioneer satellite will release the capsule, allowing it to separate and begin on its planned trajectory towards the Koonibba test range. Let's listen in.
Received an Iridium message from the vehicle.
Into the expected trajectory insertion point is about 10 minutes from now.
Copy that.
We have confirmed release. That's it from the Rocket Lab side. Back to you, Mook.
Thank you, Lindsay. So the capsule is separated. It's orienting itself as it's screaming through the atmosphere. While we wait for that, here's a little bit more about Varda.
Q4 2019 was the first time that an individual booster, Falcon 9, had actually launched and landed 4 times in a row.
Delian called me up with this idea that, hey, I think manufacturing in space is a real thing now, that rockets are reusable. From first principles, we have a unique way to manipulate chemical systems using microgravity that no one else on Earth has.
What it means now is for the first time, we actually have an economic use case that takes materials up to space, fabricates them, brings them back down as a higher value product.
The long-term vision was always pharmaceuticals because from a very simple thesis that the most valuable chemicals per unit kilogram with a large market are pharmaceuticals. So it's a perfect fit for the first industry off of our home planet.
As you're taking medicines, especially if it's a pill, if you zoom in, you'll find out that that material is made of little tiny crystals. One of the most important things is the solubility, because it starts off as a solid, but it needs to break apart to enter your body. And so there could be something that somebody has invented where if you could just get into the body, it would treat the disease. But because of the crystal form they're stuck on, it doesn't reach the solubility that's needed.
The impact that refrigeration had on the pharmaceutical industry, introducing all these new formulations of modern medicine, I think Varda will do that as well, but with gravity rather than temperature. What that outcome looks like is a function of the fluid dynamics in the drug solution. And those fluid dynamics are just fundamentally different in microgravity. Being able to do something like change a chemotherapy from an IV bag to a subcutaneous shot means there will be a person who has a better quality of life because of a space drug.
Rather than having to completely disrupt their whole work schedule, once every 2 weeks coming in for like a 4 to 6 hour intravenous drip, instead they can just go to Walgreens once a week, pick up a syringe, inject themselves in the comfort and safety of their own home.
When I entered the industry, space was very hard and very expensive. There was maybe 2 or 3 launch vehicles you could take into space. Now it's like every other day, every day there's a launch. And so really the concept of Varda is built upon easy access to space.
Whenever I tell people what I do, that I'm building a capsule that's gonna make space drugs, they don't believe me. They think it's crazy.
I just see us all as kind of pirates that are willing to just jump in and we're gonna figure it out.
You see how much passion everyone has.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take our work very seriously.
There is a swath of engineers who are also putting their blood, sweat, and tears into every single analysis, every single line of code, every single line of testing to make sure the vehicle is able to launch and come home safely.
There's still a lot that can go wrong. Going into mission 1, we kept saying, hey, it's probably better than a coin flip.
For the day of reentry, many of us have been working around the clock to prepare for the actual reentry portion of the mission.
It was a very dramatic experience.
The first thing we hear, is nominal burn duration. We don't know if it succeeded yet, but it's coming back for sure.
It survived the worst parts of reentry, the worst parts of the atmosphere.
Parachute has opened. It is going to land somewhere.
People erupted. They were so happy. More people have won the Super Bowl than have done what we've done. On W-2, we have a spectrometer looking outside a window in our vehicle. And this way, as we're ripping through the atmosphere at Mach 25, this plasma is engulfing the spacecraft. It gets hotter than the surface of the sun. And with that data, you can develop better heat shields and navigation systems.
We have a pharmaceutical experiment, but we also have a STRATFI AFRL payload.
On W-2, we have multiple customers. For example, NASA has instrumented heat shields on board. The Air Force has the spectrometer we talked about.
Understanding the material better will help them better use it or make it cheaper to build so that the missions don't cost as much.
It definitely legitimizes the testbed functionality where you're able to further your company objectives while still providing a service for other teams and other organizations as well. They're able to trust us to be able to come through for them.
I want to make it really, boring for everyone involved. Like, it needs to be so routine, so simple that everything just happens exactly as planned.
It means your project really worked and you've succeeded and there's nothing left to do there because you've solved the hard problems. So now you can go work on the next thing that's not yet boring and make it boring.
We're hoping to fly 4 times next year. Once we're on the order of a once-a-month cadence, at that point, cadence is no longer a limiter on our ability to actually commercialize these pharmaceutical products.
What the North Star looks like is developing a drug using microgravity that actually helps people.
You take a step back and you're just like, wow, we could really have an impact on people's lives.
When Varda is successful, there will be a footnote in history in the sense that we were the first industry off our home planet with routine operations, and we did so by creating a product that helps millions of people on the ground.
Let's check back in with Mission Control and see where the capsule is now.
It's at 341 kilometers, a healthy 7.8 kilometers a second.
We're about to see my favorite part of reentry, the capsule at Mach 29. This is the part that's most important for our friends at the Air Force Research Lab. The Osprey spectrometer is measuring the plasma and unique chemistry of the atmosphere that the capsule is experiencing.
Recovery confirming sighting of a re-entering object in ground-based optical tracking.
I want to welcome Marat Kulakhmetov today to chat about hypersonics. He is our resident expert on hypersonics and reentry, and we're seeing incredible environments, incredible speeds coming back from space. So Marat, what is the vehicle experiencing right now after we've separated?
So now that we've separated from the bus already put us on a deorbit trajectory that will intersect with the atmosphere. About now, our vehicle should start sensing the rarefied environments of the rarefied upper atmosphere and start reorienting itself so that the heat shield points it to the hot part of the flow. And then as it starts getting deeper into the atmosphere, because it's traveling hypersonically, it will start generating a shock layer in front of it. And a shock layer compresses all the incoming gas. Now, if you guys remember back from high school physics, anytime you compress a gas, that gas will also get really hot. So whenever you do that with flows as high as Mach 25 to Mach 30, those shock layer temperatures will start reaching as high as 25,000 to 30,000 degrees Kelvin.
Got it.
Now, it's hard to put that in perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's at least 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun.
That's wild.
Just imagine touching the surface of the sun and holding your hand there for 5 seconds.
Yeah. I don't think anyone wants to do that.
No, and we won't be able to do it, but neither can the air. So that temperature starts ripping air molecules apart. So the nitrogen, the oxygen molecules that exist in the free stream, once they go through the shock layer, they get ripped apart to just become atomic oxygen or atomic nitrogen. And it's also hot enough to start ripping electrons off of those air molecules. And when you do that, you no longer have air, you have plasma.
Yeah.
And plasma reacts very different than air.
So how are we surviving these incredibly high heats? No normal spacecraft can just re-enter and survive Mach 25 and temperatures higher than the surface of the sun.
Right. So we have this heat shield called the PICA-C heat shield. What it does is that when hot air touches the surface, part of the surface absorbs that hot temperature and goes away and it cools off the rest of the vehicle. So interestingly, even though the outside air is at 25 to 1,000 degrees Kelvin, inside, it's probably still pretty cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's got to protect our things that are on the inside. And we're flying a couple of really cool experiments on this one, right?
Yeah.
So we've got our pharmaceutical payload, but also is the first time we're flying an Air Force experiment. And it's,
awesome.
It's kind of going to be history making. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned, the air outside of these hypersonic vehicles is composed of dissociated oxygen, nitrogen, and plasma. And all of those things react very differently than what regular air would be. It interacts with the heat shield differently, it affects aerodynamics differently, and it affects the way things communicate, how you are able to communicate to the blackout differently. Just to give you kind of a historical context, the first time the space shuttle came into the atmosphere, because the air reacted differently than what engineers expected, its attitude was slightly different and it got very close to tumbling out of control.
Wow, that's wild. So we almost lost the first space shuttle.
We almost lost the first space shuttle. That's not something a lot of people know, but it's kind of wild.
Wild, yeah.
So what the sensors, the Osprey sensor will do is it will probe the air that's outside the capsule in the hot locations in excess of 10,000 degrees Kelvin and try to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And just for additional context is, there have been other capsules that flew with heat flux probes or pressure probes or thermocouple probes, but all of those other probes, they just provide one little piece to the puzzle. So if you're a detective, one little piece is not enough. You really got to see the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. And
in comparison, the spectrometer that's flying on this capsule is kind of like a DNA analyzer. Not only does it tell you, oh, this couch cushion was hot, it will tell you that couch cushion was this hot, saw this much temperature, so this chemical composition of all these atoms that are in there, and gave you some insight into how do they actually react.
Yeah.
So this is very rich, very high fidelity data that currently does not exist.
So this is going to inform on next generation spacecraft vehicle technology.
Oh, yeah.
And how we're going to go design that next generation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we as a field understand that we do not understand enough about high temperature flows. But thus far we just did not have enough information to anchor our better fidelity models or validate the new knowledge that came online in the last couple of decades. So this data will validate models, will calibrate new capabilities, and enable everything from safer flights to Mars to more effective DoD missions through the atmosphere to understanding what our adversaries might be able to do as they fly at high speeds toward our assets.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for all that. Thanks for all that info and what we're really experiencing upon reentry right now. So the capsule is approaching land pretty soon. Let's check in with Amy over at Southern Launch and see how things are going over there.
I'm out here with the Varda team, the University of Southern Queensland, and I can confirm that we just saw the capsule fly across the night sky.
And now we're hearing chutes are deployed, which means we're successfully going to be landing back here on Earth.
125 meters.
What's 125 meters?
It's 125 meters off the ground. And it is currently going 0.1 meters per second. 131 meters off the ground, 0.1 meters per second. So it's taunting us.
At this point, Winnebago 2 capsule has landed safely.
We really locked in with the weather tonight. There is not a cloud in the sky and the stars are shining bright, and that Varda capsule shone just as bright as those stars. Sejuna Mission Control have just radioed in to let us know the capsule has landed safely, so we're all very excited over here in Australia. Next steps are when it's first light, we'll be jumping on helicopters to fly out and find the capsule. But before we get on those helicopters, let's take a closer look at what Southern Launch does.
All systems are nominal.
Listen, T-2 hour. 3, 2, 1. We are go for launch.
Ready for lift
Southern Launch owns and operates 2 commercial spaceports in South Australia, the Whalers Way Orbital Launch Complex and the Koonibba Test Range. The Whalers Way Orbital Launch Complex specializes in orbital launches into sun-synchronous and polar orbits. The Koonibba Test Range is the largest commercial test range in the Southern Hemisphere and ideal for suborbital launches and returns from space. The Koonibba Test Range has over 41,000 square kilometers of space, or for our American audience, over 15,830 square miles, a third of the size of the state of Ohio, of uninhabited land in outback Australia. The Koonibba Test Range is located a short flight from the South Australian capital, Adelaide. The range is a 40-minute drive from the regional centre of Sejuna, which is where our teams stay during mission campaigns. We operate the Koonibba Test Range in partnership with the Koonibba Community Aboriginal Corporation. Koonibba is a small Indigenous township that has been the home to many firsts for the Australian space industry since the first commercial launch took place at the Koonibba Test Range in 2020. Our mission is to work closely with our customers to meet their space mission goals. Our expert teams secure all approvals to conduct missions at both of our ranges, which includes environmental approvals, launch and return permits. We even work with airspace regulators to manage the airspace around our sites to ensure not only is the activity safe, but has minimal disruptions. Southern Launch also has a dedicated team that works on the logistics for each mission and determines how our on-site infrastructure can meet our customer mission requirements. Our goal is for our customer to focus on their space technology and arrive on site with everything ready to go. Insurance for missions at our sites is also low, as they are located away from the general public and key infrastructure, which means we can help more companies get to and from space. For the W-2 mission, our team has been working alongside Varda and Rocket Lab to plan the safe re-entry. As the range operators, our responsibility is to source the regulatory approvals, which was actually the first time a commercial spacecraft re-entry was granted permission in Australia.
Southern Launch is proud to support the W-2 mission by providing the landing range for the capsule, offering advanced tracking capabilities and collaborating with the Australian Space Agency to secure the permits for a safe and successful re-entry into Australia. As the range operations manager for the mission, my role on site is to oversee range operations and provide the go confirmation on behalf of my team, ensuring that the range is clear and safe for landing. In the lead up to today, our team has been out setting up the range in preparation for the re-entry. We have people stationed 100 kilometers away tracking it from the ground. We also have a team that's in the sky right now above the clouds and is ready to track the capsule from the air.
This is a momentous occasion for Southern Launch and Australia. This is the first re-entry into the Koonibba Test Range and is the start of a new industry here for Australia.
expecting to be on the ground for very long. We're just doing some photo inspections. We have to remove the parachute. Of course, it's in brush. That could add some complication, add a little time. But then after that, we're just bagging it up and it's ready to go.
We would like, on behalf of the Koonibba Council and community, extend a warm welcome to you all, to the Varda team.
We're gonna go ahead and try to expedite getting the parachute off. Once we get the parachute off, we'll do more photos, and then after that, it'll really just be bagging it up.
It's a girl!
Woo! That was wild. So pumped right now. Thanks for watching. Look out for W3 coming down soon.